Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Rory Cramer. I'm CEO of HomeViews. This morning, I'm going to give you a very quick summary of our Build to Rent report that came out in May this year, but then an update on the resident experience from lockdown 3.0. The Build to Rent report, which launched, as I said, in May, and is, by the way, free to download. And you can download through a link on our page on the brilliant Build to Rent Forum app, or visit HomeViews.com. The report looks at 7,000 verified tenant reviews, 3,500 of which were in Build to Rent buildings, and 3,500 of which were in build to sell buildings, so tenants with a private landlord. And the idea behind the report was to really focus in on the experience that build to rent is providing to tenants, and what is the difference between what the standard tenant experience has been to date. This sample was actually over 40% of the occupied build to rent buildings at that point in time. So the data set was from 2020. And what was, so it's the largest data set of its kind, and it really did provide granular level insights across all of the category ratings that HomeViews takes, so on facilities, design, location, value, and management. And some of the summary of that findings was that build to rent is delivering the best resident experience in new build in the UK. That was backed up with our previous Build to Rent report that we did in 2019. And it's an amazing accolade for the Build to Rent industry. The Build to Rent tenants rated their experience higher in every single category score. So overall star rating for a building, but also the facilities, the design, the location, value, and management. But where the main differential was management. And it's exactly the same feedback as we saw in our previous report. The management of build to rent is what really makes the difference of experience. And the owners actually rate their management experience at 25% lower than a build to rent tenant. Another interesting bit of feedback was when you looked at the design of ratings and feedback on build to rent developments that were purpose built versus retained to rent versus office to resi conversions. There was a very clear difference in experience. Purpose built build to rent delivered the best experience, retained to rent second best, and office to resi conversion was the lowest. There were some outliers that actually delivered a great experience in office to resi conversions, but in the main, purpose-built build to rent delivered the best experience. One of the big issues actually around that was soundproofing, interestingly. And obviously space in 2020 was at a premium, being locked in our homes. And I thought this was quite a funny quote. I had enough room to walk around the perimeter of my apartment to get some exercise, which helped keep me sane. I think we all know we can all align ourselves with that feeling. But having a gym boosted the overall facilities rating by 10% of build to rent buildings, and having a concierge boosted the overall star rating by 5%. So please do download the report. It's absolutely free, and you'll be able to read over 89 pages of very, very detailed insights at your leisure. Now to go on to the lockdown 3.0 insights. What was really interesting here is we obviously tracked this data, and within the report looks at the COVID experience for lockdown 1 and lockdown 2 in 2020. But how did that differ with lockdown 3? And I think what's fascinating, this is the overall star rating tracker. You can see that green line, build to rent, takes a significant dive in March and April. Now, this was a bit of a surprise. You can see that dive in lockdown 1, which was when everyone, obviously no one was prepared for the first lockdown. All of the challenges that management teams faced, it took people a while to get on top of. But Build to Rent performed fantastically throughout that period, throughout the interim between lockdown 1 and lockdown 2. There was a bit of a dive post lockdown 2, but the most pronounced overall star rating dive was in March, April. So coming to the end of lockdown 3, and actually when we dived into the qualitative information that we collect, obviously we collect ratings, but the real nuggets is in the text of the reviews. People had just had enough. There was lockdown fatigue. And while there was a real understanding as to why facilities weren't open and that maybe repairs and maintenance wasn't as quick as it would have been otherwise, there was a feeling that COVID was being used as an excuse. Now, whether that was fair or not is another question. But that was what was the feedback that we saw in that time frame. But I'm very happy to say that there was a bounce back. And Build to Rent, the experiences since then has come back to sort of normal levels. When you then look at that data broken down, this is a bit of a busy slide, apologies, but the category score ratings over that time frame, the biggest dive in lockdown 3 between March and April was management, and the second was facilities. And when you actually go into the detail about why that is, I think that the actual fall was 4.47 to 4.02, and the use of excuses, as I mentioned, so COVID was used as a reason all year for non-emergency repairs to be ignored. I think it just was a build-up to a point where people had enough of having the same feedback, which was inevitable and not really anything the management teams could have done about that. Rent reductions were a huge hit, as you would expect, and where they were recognised, the resident satisfaction went up considerably. But in between February and April, the perception of value, the value score, reduced quite significantly across Build to Rent. And I think that was because although there is an understanding of why amenities and facilities were closed, there was a feeling that actually, why am I still paying for it? Now, we know why as an industry, why that was still being paid for, but there was a reduction in the understanding from the residents. And as I said, although management, it was generally incredibly highly rated for Build to Rent, and in general is the standout point of difference, it really did take a pummeling in that towards the end of lockdown 3, with some of the feedback being that there was tardy responses. But I think anecdotally, from all the reviews I've read, I think this was more a factor of resident fatigue of lockdown than an issue with the management teams. And then just looking at a couple of other points, that value point that I mentioned, in fact, that the value drop in perceived value was quite similar from lockdown 1 to lockdown 3, so significant. And the reviews increasingly mentioning bad management, but also around enforcement of COVID rules. So maybe certain management teams, becoming maybe a bit more relaxed, maybe the residents not listening, but that having an impact on some other residents' experience that still were feeling like, they wanted to be protected and they wanted to feel safe, and maybe, that relaxation of those rules or people's general the way that they were acting is having an impact on some residents, which you would also expect. So that's all from me. Please join me again tomorrow, where I'll be giving a quick update on the top rated Build to Rent buildings in the UK and the top rated operators in the UK. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much to Rory for that presentation. Really fascinating stuff. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did. And don't forget, you can download that report and keep that and have a look at the stats. So 7,000 tenants were ranked. and rated build to rent through the lockdown. So do go and have a look at that. And Rory will be joining us again tomorrow, and he'll be giving an update on the BTR Awards, which HomeViews runs with UKAA. And he'll be looking at the top 20 BTR buildings and top 10 management companies across the UK, which is going to be absolutely fascinating. So thank you again to Rory.